Hi, I'm Dr. Heather Steinman. And this is a presentation called Living Literature through the Transatlantic and Pacific Project. The Transatlantic and Pacific Project was initiated in the year 2000 by Dr. Bruce Maylav of North Dakota State University in the US and Dr. Sonia van de Pitte of Ghent University in Belgium. And the project connects instructors and students from both hemispheres. Instructors pair with their colleagues from other countries for co-teaching, while students join to co-study with their peers across the world. So the project is 17 going on 18 years old, and I have worked with the TAP project and with Dr. Ruslan Saduov of Bashkir State University in Russia for I think 5 years, somewhere around there. This portion of the project has been designed to establish collaboration between the students of Western New Mexico University and Bashkir State University. WNMU students took part in an Introduction to Literature class, and BSU students are in a speech writing class. For the assignment, WNMU and BSU students swapped family stories, stories that had something to do with their identity. They edited the stories for, in our case, for International English, and in the case of BSU students, for American English, and the project took just about a week. The student work presented here is from students that live in the Republic of Bashkortostan, and it is one of the Russian regions. It's a part of Russia. Ufa is the region's capital. Bashkortostan is named after the population that initially lived on this land, the Bashkir people, which is also the name of the university, Bashkir State. Therefore, today the population of Bashkortostan is as follows. The ethnic Russian makes up approximately 50% of the population, ethnic Bashkir from 20 to 25%, and ethnic Tatar is about 20 to 25% as well. The rest accounts for almost 100 really small ethnic minorities. At least half of the students are ethnic Bashkir or Tartar, so at least half of the students that we worked with, which is why they might know Bashkir or Tartar languages. When I asked Dr. Saduov why there are so few men in his class, which you'll see from the photos up here, Dr. Saduov replied, he said, yes, it's typical at our school. We are a philology school, which is, philology is the study of language, and traditionally females dominate at this school. In Russia, there is a tendency for boys to go to more to engineering schools than to humanities schools. And so because of the differences in class sizes, there are a couple times when you'll see the same photo of the same student up on the screen, and those students sent 2 stories to be read by our students. And so everyone that's reading today, just make sure that the photo that's up there is the photo of the student that you worked with, and tell us your name and the name of your partner, and then just begin to read your story. And when you are done, hopefully you all have the order that you're going in. If not, just look for your partner's photo, okay? Right, so first we'll have April.
All right, my name is April Mitchell, and this is Sofia. And this is Sofia's story. I like spending my holidays actively. My favorite time for the vacation is summer because it's warm and sunny. It's a good time for a seaside holiday. I've been in Cyprus this year with my family. Nature is very welcoming in this area, and the sea is amazingly beautiful. There are many forests, gardens, and parks. What I really liked was that nature. I also like the view of the vineyard stretched in neat rows and full of ripe grapes. The climate is mostly dry and hot. Morning and evening winds can be cool, but afternoons are so hot it's impossible to walk barefoot. The best place to be when it gets hot is by the sea. The coolness is soothing. Lying under the sun and swimming in the sea are my favorite activities while on vacation. We also took a couple of excursions in Cyprus, and I should say the history of this is very interesting. I would like to share with you some interesting facts about this place. Cyprus became independent from the British in 1960 on August 16. However, they celebrate their Independence Day on the 1st of October every year. According to the legend, the Greek goddess of love, Aphrodite, was born in Cyprus. The country is known as a playground of the gods. My family loves this island, especially the food.
Hi, I'm Emily Dominguez, and I will be reading Kate's story. I have a fairly large family. My mom, my dad, my older brother, and my younger brother. We have pets, 2 tomcats, 2 parrots, and a puppy. I would like to tell you about how the puppy appeared in our family. My elder brother dreamed about having a puppy for so long, but he was afraid that my mother would object, since she always told us that she would not tolerate a small, shiny creature running around the house. It was my brother's holiday on the 2nd of August, and he told us that he wanted to make himself a little surprise. No one understood what he had in mind. My mother and I started setting the table when we suddenly saw my brother come up to me and said, "We need to talk." We moved away, and he told me that he had made a deal with the owner of a charming spaniel about buying one of their offspring. I was shocked, and I didn't know what to say. He persuaded me to go with him and look at the puppy in the car. It was a long and tedious trip, as there is a long distance between our settlements. But when we arrived, when I first saw this gorgeous creature, I didn't regret that I spent so much time for the trip. I fell in love with this puppy, and as we approached the house, my brother began to worry about my mother's reaction to this surprise. It turned out that all of our fears were false, and she couldn't resist the charms of the baby. Now she loves it more than anyone else, and even calls herself its grandma. His name is Stanford, and we named it after one of the characters in our favorite cartoon, Gravity Falls.
Hi, my name's Kylie, and I'm going to be reading our town's story. My grandmother had a hard childhood during World War II. She likes to tell us stories about it. All of our family and I like to listen to her stories, even though we know most of them by heart. There's something special in the atmosphere of her simple narrative in front of soft lamplight and a big cup of tea. I'd like to share some of these stories with you. When the war began, my grandmother's family had to stay at the village where they were spending vacation because it was too dangerous to go back home. They tried to go back later, but the Soviet government had already took their home for some reason. When her father had gone to war, her mother was left to raise the children alone. By the way, there were 7 of them. They were living in the small apartment in barracks. Her mother was working hard and was doing the best she could to take care of the children, but it was never enough. At the same time, there was a nice old couple in the neighborhood who had no children. They asked my great-grandmother to keep one of her kids. She agreed and gave them my grandmother, who was only about 10. But it was a good opportunity for her. I think in such a hard time, it was a good decision. In the beginning, she felt well. She had a good time there. The old couple was very kind to her, and she had a big meal and much attention. Often she went to play with her brothers and sisters, but they weren't very supportive. Maybe it's because of envy or feeling that she had betrayed them. Anyway, she became sad soon. She was missing her family badly. She decided to escape. However, it was winter outside and her coat hung too high for her to retrieve. She couldn't dare ask. Later during dinner, the little girl couldn't even eat. "What happened?" the old man said. "Mr. Teplikov, please give me my coat. I want to go back to Mom," she said with a tear in her eye. He understood the situation. Then she put all her stuff in the small case, there wasn't much of it, and went back home. Afterwards, some of her brothers and sisters also tried to live with this couple. They were thankful, but soon came back. The point is, as hard as life may be, every kid is devoted to his mother and family more than anything in the world.
Can I take this off? All right. All right, my name is Nick Hamilton, and my partner is Dana Kaziamatova. And so let me begin the story. My name is Dana. My whole life I lived in Ufa, one of the most beautiful towns of Bashkortostan. Bashkortostan consists a significant part of Russia. The climate in our country is harsh enough. We have long, severe winters and very short summers. In my family, by nationality, almost everyone are Tatars, but we usually speak Russian. I want to introduce you to one simple story from my mother's childhood. Traditionally, children in Russia spend their summer in villages with their grandmothers and grandfathers. When my mother was 9 years old and her brother, my uncle, was 4, they were taken to their mother's village. Usually they played with each other or helped in the garden. It seems that nothing dangerous can happen in such quiet and peaceful places like that. However, for children of their age, any small thing can become a danger. Most Russian people have cellars where they save jars of pickles, vegetables, and jams for long winters. One day, the grandmother was especially busy and she forgot to close the hatch to the cellar in the floor. And that day, the children were chasing the neighbor's cat, and the cat was running inside of the house. And the uncle, he knocked over like a bunch of glass, and he got cut on his eyebrow. Yeah, he got like a scar on his eyebrow. And ironically, the same thing happened to his daughter, and she has the same cut on her eyebrow as well. And yeah, that's just a little thing from his uncle's side of the family. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jalen Lawrence, and my partner was Dr. Ruslan Sadwov, and his story is, this is a story my mother told me about my dad when he was a young man. I did not even exist at that time, and I know that back then, my parents did not really have a good life. But what's interesting is that they still somehow remember mostly good things. I think that you have to be a special type of person to carry good stories with you about the past that was less than bright. As a young man, my father served in the army because conscription was and is obligatory in Russia. After the service, he decided to become a doctor in the army and entered a military academy in a city not far from his native city of Ufa. My sister was already a small child when he entered the academy, and my dad had to divide his time between family and studies, making him commute frequently and resulting in tiredness and lack of time. At the same time, to succeed and graduate from the academy, he had to have good grades. So he designed a strategy which helped him look better than the rest of the students. Since he had already had military experience under his belt, and because he was older than most of his classmates, his military rank was higher, and he was the head of his class. Among other responsibilities, his duty was to decide who was going to pass an oral examination first. In example, he defined the order of students who would go to take the exam in groups of 4 and 5. Also, it was a rule that the head of the class was supposed to be the last to enter the room with the examining board. Aware of this rule, he would first let the brightest students who excelled in studies pass. Then he sent the average students, and finally, those who were the weakest. It was a good strategy because teachers would notice a sharp difference between good and bad students and the gradual decline in quality of oral answers would not be so obvious. But it was a good strategy for my father as well, because after the weaker students, remember he was supposed to be the last one to go, his answers sounded really good, and teachers never asked him many questions. So with a bit of strategic thinking, my dad always managed to have good grades, no matter how well he was prepared.
I'm reading for Keyshawn. She's not here. So her partner's name is Anastasia, and her story goes, I want to tell you a story that means a lot to me. When I was little, my family lived near Moscow, where I really loved that place. But my father was in poor health. My parents decided I should live with my grandparents. They didn't want me to see him suffer. When I was 6, I moved to Ufa to live with them. My grandparents tried to give me a careless childhood, but I tried to imagine my life with my father by my side. The whole world collapsed when he died. My dreams were broken, but he gave me a great gift. That is my memories of him. I remember his warm hugs and his calm voice, but the most powerful memory in his story about the stars. One day we were walking late after some celebration. He showed me the Ursa Major and told me the legend about this constellation. This story was about a nymph Callisto, daughter of Lycaon and the helper of goddess Artemis. Her beauty was legendary. Even Zeus could not resist her spell. The union of the god and the nymph led to the birth of a son, Arcas. Enraged, Hera transformed Castillo into a bear. During one of the hunts, Arcas nearly killed his mother, but she was saved by Zeus by sending her into the sky. She became Ursa Major, and her son became Ursa Minor. That impressed me. The family of Zeus can be together for infinity, and when he misses his family, he can just lay his eyes upon the stars. I do this when I miss my father. The thought that he is still in my heart and I can be with him when I watch the sky gives me hope and encourages me, because in such moments I do not feel lonely. That day, he also said that a lot of people were looking at the stars at the same time that we were. They could be happy or sad. They could look for beauty or search for answers. They were not alone because we were watching the same stars. We were together.
I'm Elijah Jones, and I'm reading a story for Valeria. I will tell you about the family I grew up in, about an unusual and weird family. The point is that I'm studying at a university far away from home, or far away from my family. They still go in and show me their love and care from a distance, whether it's phone calls from mom or messages from my sister that demonstrate that they miss me and wait for me at home. But no, if I miss my mom's phone call, she starts to suspect me of belonging to a cult. And I receive endless, call me on FaceTime, where are you? I know that you keep everything from us type messages. I actually get out of town with my friends without approval from my parents and phone really often. My dad by now thinks that I acquired 3 children and have a husband who is an alcoholic instead of studying in Ufa. When I talk with my friends about how my dad wakes up every single morning and cooks delicious breakfast, despite the fact that there are 2 girls sleep till noon, my friends don't believe me. Because people don't want to hear the stereotype about the perfect wife and daughter. I don't want to say that my mom can't cook. She cooks amazing, but frequently for our cat, which adores reflections of the sun and jumping off the fridge onto someone's head and attacking someone's eyes. Fortunately, I have a sister. She is a miracle. She has never refused to bully my favorite thing or friends. And besides, she thinks that I have no taste for anything and I have no idea how to live. Nevertheless, I think that she is composed of their love, which they feel about me. I am Miss Universe, the most beautiful girl, the best person for her. Every trip, camping does not leave no trace in my memory. I love my family because of their honesty, emotional response, and sincerity.
So my name is Roman Winter, and I'll be reading a story from Igul Gayazova. It goes like this. I'd like to share with you a story from my childhood in the village. Well, my brother and I had a tradition back to 2008 that every time our parents left us alone for a couple of hours, or even for a day, we would tend to go and buy a lot of stuff, such as chips and sodas, candies, and so on. We had a really good time being together, watching movies and cooking for ourselves. We would play outdoors, riding bicycles and doing whatever we wanted to. Our parents didn't allow us to eat junk food, so that's why we waited so much for the time when our parents would go somewhere. You know, that's the memory that left a mark on my soul, because since childhood, and despite our big age difference, my brother and I grew up being very close, since at that time we hadn't had our little sister yet. Now we go down memory lane together and look back on how we used to have fun when we were little.
My name's Jordan, and I'm going to read a story by Olga. The story my mom told me a few years ago when she was 2 years old. My grandparents and she used to live in Cairo because my grandpa was an interpreter there. My grandma worked as a chairlady in some charity organization, and in their house was a small room in which my mom was not allowed to go. She was curious all the time when she was in what was in that mysterious room. One day my grandma did something in that room and she asked to forget to lock it. My mom yelled at the temptation and smoothed into this room. And there she saw an unbelievable thing. There was a huge heap of toys. My mom was buzzing because she had thought everything was for her. Meanwhile, my grandma realized that she had forgotten to do something important, and she was shocked when she saw her daughter playing with toys which were bought for the poor children from the charity organization. That's because there was no space there and grandma had to take them home. She told my mom everything wasn't for her and she couldn't play with these toys. My mom told me that in that moment, her small world collapsed, and her first depression and disenchantment with humanity.
Okay, my name's Sabrina, and I'm going to read the story Vidal. Summer is a special season for me. This is not only because of the holidays, but also because of the weather and the atmosphere which surrounds me is the best. June is my favorite month of the season because it starts it all off. This season makes me feel calm and relaxed, even though it's a period of my exams. I remember last June clearly. My parents, aunt, uncle, cousins, and I went fishing one afternoon. We packed up everything we needed and headed off. At first we went to a river that was surrounded by huge trees. The trees caused a lot of gnats to come around. Despite the insect repellent, most of us got attacked. The good thing is, we did catch a few fish. We soon left the river and went to a nearby pond. It was placed at the foot of the hill and there wasn't nearly as many trees. The weather was beautiful. It was sunny and warm, with a bit of wind. We spent all evening out until it got dark. In the meantime, we caught some more fish, but they weren't that big. There was a flock of wild ducks. They were swimming in the other side of the pond and were making token sounds. I tried to take a photo of them, but they were too far away. Whenever I came up close, they left fast. As the time passed, the sky was getting darker and darker. The waxing moon laid above the trees and the sun went down. It was a beautiful sunset mixed with yellow and red shades. Despite the noise the wild ducks were making, it was so quiet and peaceful. At that moment, I felt like life wasn't just passing by. Instead, I was in the center of it. I spent time with my family and enjoyed the nature. Our lives are made by these little moments.
Hi, I'm Julia,
Enriquez, and today I'll be reading my partner Yulia Kalagina's story. When my dad was a little boy, he lived in a village. There were a lot of animals such as cats, dogs, cows, horses, sheep, chickens, and ducks. For me, animals seemed so cute and all that stuff, but my dad didn't find them cute or funny at all. Every day when he came back from school, there was a duck, an evil, stubborn duck. My dad always called that duck a little evil monster. And the duck always bit him as hard as it could, so my dad always had to run away from that bird. And that's why my dad hates ducks so much.
I'm Laruni, and I'm reading Olga's story. My story is one of million stories and is a part of life. It is very widespread, but also very private. I want to tell you what happened to my family because of the Second World War. My grandma's parents lived in St. Petersburg. They lived in their own patrimony there. They were nobility and thought they were safe, but the Nazis didn't think so. One day their house was blown up, and they were lucky to live. There were a lot of homeless people, there were a lot of homeless people at the time, and the capital wasn't the safest place in the world to be. The government decided that they would have to save some people, mostly the rich and powerful, who were sent to small and unknown cities for their safety. When leaving, my grandmother could take only one thing with her, but because there was not too much space for a lot of luggage. Nevertheless, my grandmother was a bright woman and was able to wrap her sewing machine in a duvet and was able to take 2 items with her. Meanwhile, my relatives had arrived in a small city which later became my birthplace, and they were given a small piece of ground. As my grandmother tells the story, it was a small and terrible house, a nightmare for my grandma's mother, who realized she now had to cook and garden and do all house chores by herself. Can you imagine coming from a place where you had all servants all your life, and suddenly someone tells you that you have to do everything by yourself, and not having enough food or clothes? It's a total disaster. That's what my family went through. Honestly, I cannot imagine how they dealt with these struggles. They are really strong people, and I'm proud of them.
My name's James, my father, and I'll be reading Rosina Anna's story. When I was little, I was too sociable and communicative, like really too communicative. I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my mom took me for a walk. It was summer or the end of spring. Well, I do not actually remember. My mom has told me this story recently. So we went for a walk, and I talked to every old lady sitting on a park bench. In our country, speaking with strangers is not a common thing to do. Somehow, it is a part of our culture. But I really love talking to people, and I still do, when I learned how to actually do that. And I also like to voice everything I did. For example, I used to wake up and be like, "Hey, I've just woken up. You are making breakfast. Now I'm going to eat," and so on. Well, back to the story. My mother got distracted, and I was engaged in conversation with an old woman holding a basket with apples. I guess speaking with her was so interesting that I did not pay attention to anything. Or maybe I was just fascinated with apples, and I ended up actually leaving with her. I do not think this woman meant something bad, but my mother obviously got really scared when she noticed us pretty far away from her. Please do not think she is irresponsible. She is an amazing woman and the best mom ever. But everything happened so incredibly fast that I do not think we should blame her. Of course, she caught up with us, and this woman said her sorry. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this story because I did when I first heard it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Benna Whitehorse, and I will be reading Irma's story. She says, "Hi, my name is Irma, and here begins a story about my family. The big part of our life is traveling. We have seen a lot of countries: Egypt, Turkey, Cyprus, Thailand, India, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and we won't stop. Our dream is to visit as much countries as we can. It inspired me to learn languages. I want to talk with people, listen to them, and share my experiences. My parents and I have so many interesting stories, but today I will tell you only one. This year in July, we visited Istanbul for 5 days. Turkey is a friendly country, especially if you know Bashkir language. Why? Because Bashkir and Turkish are kindred languages. We have able to understand each other. It was funny when locals asked us and we tried to explain something and they have understood our speech. For example, a maid in our hotel has not knew English and we have spoken with her on Bashkir. Some words and sounds are different, but we found common ground. She and other people smiled at us when they heard their mother tongue. I think this is the most amazing part of our traveling. That's her story.
Hi, my name is Karla, and I'll be reading Adele's story. New Year's is one of the most important celebrations of the year. When I was a child, I thought that this period was full of magic. December was considered as a special month because it was snowy outside, and people began to decorate their house and a Christmas tree. Whoa, sorry. My parents and I used to celebrate this holiday meeting my grandmother and grandfather, my aunties and uncles, and my cousins. We began to prepare for the evening early on New Year's Eve. We cooked different salads and a main course. Olive salad is the most popular dish which is prepared on this holiday. Its main ingredients are potatoes, cucumbers, sausages, and eggs. Some people prefer to include onions, carrots, and peas. When everything is done, we dress up, sit at the table, eat, talk, and watch TV. The most significant moment happens at 11:55 p.m. when we watch a video appeal of President Putin. Then the bells chime and everyone drinks champagne. Many people like to wish at this moment. Before the chimes of Kremlin bells, they write their wishes on a little sheet of paper. Then they burn it down, throw it in the champagne glass, and drink it off. My cousin has done it once, and she said that her wish has been fulfilled. I haven't tried this so-called method, and I'm not sure about it, but at least it's funny. After 12 o'clock, everybody then goes outside, sets off fireworks, and just walks around the city. Now New Year's isn't so important for me, but I think it's another good reason to meet my family and spend time together, and it's great. Thank you.
My name is Anastasia, and I'm reading Adelena's story. We're all Tartars, but we usually talk only Russian because Tartar is not much spoken here as Russian. However, some members of the family are quite bad at this language, but there are many Tartar villages in my republic where this language is prior. In this kind of village my grandma lives. Being a child, my parents always left me and my younger sister in the village to spend summer holidays with my grandma on the fresh air, only fed with healthy food. I can say with confidence that I spent there the coolest days of my childhood, as there were many kids of our age. One summer sunny day, we decided to take our cousins with us to swim in the river, which is called Balaya. Surely the banks of the river wasn't checked professionally on different signs of danger, as if it was quite a wild place. But we were kids and cared about nothing. So we lost control of time and space and got too deep in the water, and the flow was stronger and faster. I turned around and realized that my sister couldn't feel the bottom of the river anymore and started literally drowning. I was screaming inside because I was too scared,
and didn't know what to do. However, I couldn't swim properly, and if I had come closer to her, I would have gotten in the hollow too. The last thing I remember is how I grabbed her somehow and pushed her in the direction of the river beach. I still have no idea how I managed to come closer to my sister and pull her out of the water if I didn't know how to swim, and I didn't feel the riverbed either. I think it was some kind of miracle or family power. We still like to remember this story with my sister, keeping it a secret from our parents. Sometimes we even laugh at it.
Hello, my name is Brooklyn Meisenheimer, and I'm going to read Layla's story. Do you believe in love at first sight? Maybe you know such people. I know them. I'm going to tell you a story of true love. This story began in 1973, 44 years ago. His name was Jerusalem. He was 28 years old, a well-built man who worked as an engineer at an aviation factory. He did not get married for a long time. One day, his sister showed him a photo of a young, beautiful 19-year-old girl whose name was Lyra. She studied at State University and wanted to be a teacher. She loved little children. Jerusalem wanted to meet her. So when his sister came to a little town where Lyra's parents lived, she brought her brother. At the same time, Lyra returned to her hometown after having passed her exams at the university, but she did not know that Jerusalem would be there or even who he was. Jerusalem fell in love at first sight when he saw her. Only a few hours later, Lyra's parents told her why he had came to their house. Jerusalem and Lyra spent a lot of time together and talked about everything in the world. He liked her because of her honesty and kindness. She liked him for his intelligence and demeanor-ness. The next day, Jerusalem proposed and she agreed. Their wedding was on the 8th of July. This day is significant in Russia because it is declared as a day of family, love, and faithfulness. People from all over the country celebrated with their families. This pair will celebrate their 45th anniversary on the 8th of July in 2018. I know them very well because Jerusalem is my grandfather and Lyra is my grandmother. I am proud of them because they carry their love through the years despite their difficulties. They still love each other to this day. They have 5 children, 3 daughters, 2 sons, and 11 grandchildren. We are one big, close-knit family. Thanks to my grandparents, I believe in such things as love at first sight.
My name is Mikayla Lopez, and I will be telling a story of Christina. My name is Christina, and I want to tell you a story which is very famous in our family. I don't know if the story is funny or sad, interesting or not, but I will tell you about it. My grandmother told me that when my mother was 6 to 7 years old, my grandpa left her in the care of my grandma, which is her great-grandmother, because they were going on a business trip in Ashgabat. My mother had long blonde hair. People were amazed by her hair because it was very long. One day when she was alone in the room, she had took a pair of scissors and cut off her own hair. She looked like a boy. When great-grandma had seen her, she took her hand and led her into the barber shop. There her hair became even shorter. She was bald and looked like the soldier Jane. When my grandparents returned from Ashgabat and saw my mother, they were in shock. They had bought her a lot of large Satan bones, so it was all for nothing. My grandma couldn't stop crying for days. Many years have passed since this situation, and I have already been born. And when I was 5 years old, I also cut off my own hair. My mom also cried for a few days, but my grandparents made fun of my mom. They said that they still remember that day as if it were yesterday. I remember that when I cut off my hair, I came into the living room with my braids and told my mom that I got a haircut. I remember that I thought I was very fashionable and I didn't understand why she was crying. And a few years later, when I grew out my hair, my little brother cut off my hair when I was sleeping, and at that time it was awful for me.
Hi, my name is Carmelita and I'm reading Renata's story. I would like to talk about my first experience with a black person. first time was with my mom in Italy. We were on the bus and I had noticed that a black woman with a sling and a baby. The baby began to fall out. My mom helped her, but I was shocked that because that was the first time I had ever seen a black person. I was 5 years old and I was staring at them, but his mom was not against. She even smiled, and then I licked my index finger and tried to rub the skin of the baby. My mom and the mom of the black child laughed. I was innocent as a child at the time, and I cannot be blamed for my doings. And now I have a lot of friends. Because I know 4 different languages, and I find it interesting to study their culture, and I have met new people. I don't care what the color of my friend's skin, the color of their hair, the weight, the height, and so on and so forth. I am not even sure if I will tell you about it just to show the vast variety of my friends, and it won't be racist. I have friends from Africa, US, Turkey, India, China, Italy, and Spain. We are all different, but we have something in common. And the most important thing is that we are all human beings.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Sorrells, and I'll be telling the story of Azalea. I'd like to tell you a story from my childhood. I have a brother who is 2 years older than me. We were very close in childhood. We always played and went to summer camps together, and he was definitely my best friend. One summer, I was sent to camp alone. Despite kind staff and new friends, I felt lonely without him. But one day, my parents and brother decided to visit me. I had been very excited since the morning because I missed them very much and wanted to share my emotions about my new friends with them. When I went outside and saw them, I was really cheerful. I noticed that my brother was holding something big and bright in his hand, and as I came closer, I saw that it was a very beautiful and colorful balloon. He gave it to me with a warm smile, and I was overwhelmed with joy. I played with it all day long. It gave me a sense of love, so I didn't feel lonely anymore. The next morning, one girl asked me to give it to her to play with for a short time. As I was a kind-hearted child, I let her borrow it. All day I was waiting for her to return the balloon, but she had no intentions of bringing it back. When I asked her about it, she popped the balloon and gave it to me with a menacing smile. I was so upset that I started crying. My tears weren't because of her action, but rather because this was a gift from my brother. After a few days, I told him about it, and he felt so bad he saved money and asked my parents to buy me a new one. One morning, I woke up and saw many balloons around me. I was very joyful because I realized how much my brother loves me. He spent all his pocket money to make me smile and forget about my loneliness. This is the sweetest and most memorable recollection from our childhood. Now we live far away from each other and don't get the opportunity to see each other often. But every time when I'm annoyed or disappointed, I remember this moment, and it returns me back to that morning, which makes me feel happy again. This event also gave us a tradition. Every year, my brother sends me balloons of different shapes and colors on my birthday.
Hi. I also had a story from Renata. It says, I adore cats. My first kitten was a gift for my birthday. My mother came in April, but it was still cold, so she was wearing fur. Of course, not natural. She was holding something inside of that fur near her chest, and when I saw a little tail which got out from a crack, I was 5 years old and I didn't quite understand what that was. Then this cute little guy came out. I pulled his little tail and heard him meow. I considered him part of the family. That is why I call him a he and not an it. He was beautiful and smart. He was red-furred and brown-eyed. Sadly, he caught an infection and lost a lot of weight. The vet told us that we had to make his death easier, and we were obligated to put him to sleep forever. Me and my mother were very depressed, and we wept a lot. When I was 17, my mother came with a large box and asked me to drink some water. I obeyed, and as I turned my head to the right, I noticed a little black tail that had disappeared at the same time. I was so happy. That was a cat. He was a Maine Coon. These cats are one of the largest domestic cats in the world. They looked like little lynxes. In February, he will turn 3 years old. I feel myself very comfortable and happy with him. We sleep together, eat together, and do some home tasks together. And this is the kind of relationship with our pets, and having a soft spot for them can make us more loving.
Do you see this, Michael? Okay, we wanted to say thank you to Dr. Sadowov and to his speech writing class for working with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.